Egypt's new president reopens a parliament that the military rulers had dissolved. The country's top judges insist their ruling that led to the military action remains valid. So, who's in charge? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mike Hanna. There's a political, legal and social storm in the wake of the action by Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi. The country is divided as to the legality of and reasons for the presidential decision. His supporters insist the president is returning legislative power to the people. Opponents maintain he's undermining the rule of law. Last month, Egypt's constitutional court ruled that part of the electoral process was unconstitutional, finding that 1/3 of seats supposed to be filled by independents had in fact been occupied by party representatives, and recommending that the whole of Parliament be dissolved. As executive authority at that stage, the Supreme Council of Armed Forces, SCAF, then decreed the closure of Parliament and barred MPs from even entering the premises. By reversing that decree, the newly elected president is essentially beginning to define the degree of executive authority he believes has been ceded by Scaf, and is also denying Scaf's insistence that it will continue to hold full legislative power until a new constitution is drawn up and a parliament is re-elected. In immediately holding a formal session, Parliament signalling its backing for the president, but by adjourning within minutes and referring the matter of its legal status to the courts, Parliament has also signalled its willingness to uphold the rule of law. So, is all of this a constitutional crisis, a political showdown, or both? To help answer this and more, we are joined by our guests. They are all in Cairo. Hisham Kassem, a veteran journalist and publisher; Hassan Nafaa, professor of political science at Cairo University and an author of several books on Egyptian foreign policy; and Sameh Fawzy, a political analyst. Welcome to you all. Let's begin with Hassan Nafaa. Is this essentially a political dispute or a legal one?
No, it is a political dispute that has been going on for some time until now. I think it started when the Muslim Brothers decided to present a candidate for the presidency. This was a move against the will and the wish of the SCAF, and I think since then we are witnessing a political fight between Muslim Brothers and the SCAF, and what we are seeing now is just one chapter of this long fight. The legal issue is used as a facade for this political fight. So the fight is essentially political, but hiding behind legal considerations.
Well, Hisham Kassem, your view on this point?
I think I disagree. I believe SCAF would have been, are much happier with Mohamed Morsi from the Brotherhood, because had it been Ahmed Shafiq, who is one of the ranks, he was going to be much more capable of dealing with them and controlling them. What we have is a case that went in front of the Constitutional Court, and the electoral law was ruled unconstitutional. All SCAF did really was, being the executive in charge of implementing court rulings, was to have a decree nullifying Parliament or dissolving Parliament. And then Mohamed Morsi basically tried to retaliate and get Parliament and use his power back in session, possibly making the biggest political mistake in the history of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Well, Sameh Fawzy, if I can just go to Sameh Fawzy at that particular point, on that question, is this political or legal? What are the motives behind it?
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Hassan Nafaa. I think it's a political struggle over power between two strong powers in the country political scene right now, the Muslim Brotherhood and the SCAF. And I think it's not an open battle, rather than it's a competition over authority and over power. And the legal battle we are seeing right now, it's just as the political mask of the real political competition between both sides. And I would like to take into account that what's going on in Egypt has been experienced many times in Pakistan, that we have a military behind the scene and the whole battle is managed by political and legal institutions within the state. And we do remember that happened over the last couple of weeks or 1 month in Pakistan. The same scenario happened in Egypt. And I do expect that this kind of standoff, this kind of struggle will continue for a long and will have different aspects and different angles in future.
Well, Hisham Kassem, I didn't mean to cut you off quite so quickly there. You were saying that you see this as a major political mistake by the Muslim Brotherhood, of which the newly elected president was a leader. Why do you believe this?
Yes, because they thought that this would turn into a conflict with Scaf, but Scaf completely avoided any collision with them. And in fact, we've seen over the past 2 days, Field Marshal Tantawi and the Scaf receive President Morsi in military parades and graduation ceremonies. But the clash came from the judiciary and the secular forces, and that's the least that the Brotherhood expected. They expected a clash with Scaf, who felt that they were overruled by the president, and that the people would rally behind them against military rule, but it worked out in a completely different way, and now the major fallout is with the judiciary. The Judicial Club, in addition to a number of other courts, have given President Morsi 36 hours to withdraw his decree, and have threatened to freeze or to suspend court operations over the next couple of days, and not to implement any law passed by this parliament on grounds that it is dissolved and unconstitutional.
Well, Hassan Nafaa, do you see this as a miscalculation by the newly elected president?
No, at all. As a matter of fact, I see the fight is essentially political, and the elected president wants to recover his full power that was limited by the SCAF. We don't have to forget that just before the runoff, the SCAF has modified the constitutional declaration, and he prolonged, the SCAF prolonged its political existence by dissolving the parliament. So the parliament, well, it is a decision of the Constitutional Court, but the timing of the decision was essentially political, and the Constitutional Court has cooperated with the SCAF to issue that decision in this particular moment. We had two previous precedents in the history of the Constitutional Court. Previously, it took at least 3 years to dissolve the parliament, and this time it took only 45 or 46 days to take that decision. So the power conflict was going on for some time, and the SCAF had to give back full power on June 30. Now, by dissolving the parliament, the SCAF became the legislative body, and by this way it prolonged its political power. This is the fight that Morsi wanted to go ahead with, and to recover his full power. And this is, I think, the first step, and it will be followed by other steps, maybe to abolish completely the amendment of the constitutional declaration. So the fight is not over yet.
Well, Sameh Fawzy, let's make quite clear here. The Constitutional Court made a ruling on the constitutionality of Parliament as it was set up then. It was the Supreme Council of Armed Forces that actually acted on that ruling by issuing the decree. So do we have now a conflict between the court and the president, or between SCAF and the president, in terms of what constitutes executive powers for the new figure?
I would like to see the issue in a broader sense, that the conflict is between the Egyptian state, the deep-rooted Egyptian state, which including SCAF and the Constitutional Court, and the newly elected president who would like, as a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, as a leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, would like to rebuild the state according to his point of view and according to the vision of the political Islam in Egypt. So the conflict now has different angles, as I mentioned earlier. One angle is the conflict between the president and the Constitutional Court, but there are many other routes in such conflicts. You will find a conflict between the Islamic establishment and the political Islam, conflict between some groups of journalists and press syndicate in particular and the Muslim Brotherhood over the domination of the public press. So you will find the different aspects of the conflict you are talking about. But in such a conflict, based on the court ruling, I think that the president should respect the court ruling made by the Constitutional Court unconditionally, as the President Mubarak himself, who was portrayed as the authoritarian president in Egypt, respected all the verdicts and rulings made by the Constitutional Court. And this is the time to build the new governance in Egypt based on the rule of law, rather than ignoring an important ruling made by the Supreme Court in Egypt.
Now, supporters of the president insist that he is respecting the court, that this decision is in no way a repudiation of the court's judgment. It is, in fact, a repudiation of the way in which Scaf, the military, acted on that particular judgment. Hassan Nafaa, though, that issue that you brought up about why the Supreme Council of Armed Forces has issued no comment on this latest presidential decision, when one would have expected they would have expressed concern about the reverse of an executive decision that they took.
No, as a matter of fact, the president wanted to make it clear that he is not standing against the constitutional decision. He just apologized the administrative decision taken by the SCAF to dissolve the parliament. So, as a matter of fact, the parliament made a session today, and the parliament suspended immediately its sessions and sent the constitutional decision to the cassation court to decide how the decision of the constitutional court should be implemented. But as a matter of fact, the SCAF want it to be a crisis not only between the SCAF and the president, but it wants to make it a conflict between the judicial body and the Muslim Brothers on one hand, and between all the liberal forces and the Muslim Brothers also. And as I already mentioned, this is not the end of it. This should be just a step forward, and the end game is to end completely the role of the SCAF and to push it to go back to its barracks. This is the real issue. Mohamed Morsi wants to be a full president, not just a facade for the chairman of the SCAF, and this is the power struggle which is going on right now. But as I already mentioned, the legal issue is used as a tool for the fight, because they don't want, neither the SCAF nor the president or the Muslim Brothers want to have a direct confrontation between the two of them.
But Hisham Kassem, let's just pick up and stay with this legal issue at the moment. We have a situation where some executive authority has been handed over to the new president. SCAF is insisting that it holds on to certain other elements of the executive authority. Mohamed Morsi is not the commander-in-chief, for example. He has no budgetary oversight over military affairs. Is not the issue here a lack of clarity about what powers this newly elected president has in relation to the body that held executive authority before?
Well, of course, this is a dispute. I mean, suppose we had a fully elected parliament now and had it not been dissolved. That would have been one situation. But even in a situation like that, do we hand power of the war decision immediately to the president, or should military accountability to civilian rule be something we do in the next 5 to 10 years? Remember, the Egyptian military has been disgraced 3 times on the hands of Nasser, 56, 61, and 67, and since then there's been a ruling to make a separation. I think it's wise that the war decision stays with the military for a few years. But again, this must not be mixed with what's happening right now. What's happening right now is basically an attempt to override the Constitutional Court by the Muslim Brotherhood, who have shown political greed, as the case has been throughout their history. Mubarak did not have the audacity to take a decision like that. Morsi has taken it, and now they're trying to find the legal framework for it. Today they go to Parliament and meet, take one decision to take the case to the Constitutional Court, which is very Orwellian legal jargon. You cannot take the, to the Cassation Court. You cannot take the issue of constitutionality to the Cassation Court. The Cassation Court looks into procedures of the election based on laws that were approved initially by the Constitutional Court. So I don't think we should be really mixing the two. I think this is a power struggle, but the Brotherhood realized that they offended a party they did not expect to offend, the judiciary and the secular political forces.
Well, Sameh Fawzy, amidst all this discussion about what is a legal position, what is a constitutional position, one must always remember that the Egyptian people have taken part in a series of electoral processes. They still appear to be as far away from a democratic realization of these electoral processes as they were before it began. What role does the public have in this while the politicians and the lawyers argue?
This is one of the problems we are facing in Egypt. This is a problem of the political elite from different political chats and the political backgrounds, that they disputed over the roadmap of democracy in Egypt since the end of Mubarak regime. And we started episodes of misunderstanding and political conflicts between political elites and the SCAF on the other hand. I think one of the problems we have that we haven't experienced the true concept of the transitional period. We expected that we get transitional period after the end of the Mubarak regime, after the topple of the Mubarak regime, that will start with the new constitution, new government, new set of laws that enhance freedoms and liberties of Egyptian people. But what happens that the SCAF made an agreement? It's a subtle, or it's not clearly happened, but many people are speaking about an agreement between the SCAF and the Muslim Brotherhood. And instead of having a new constitution, we amended some articles in the previous constitution in Egypt, and we started episodes of political unrest over conflicts like religious state or secular state, main principles of the constitution. And even the committee which will draft the constitution, the second committee is working now, and it's under fire, and I do expect that it will collapse at any time over the conflicts between the political elite, not the conflict between the Brotherhood and the SCAF. So
well, let me just take this point, if I may, Sameh Fawzy, if I may take that point to Hassan Nafaa. Many in the public, and from what we're hearing here, would argue that people, leaders, are acting in their own self-interest, not in the interest of achieving a democratic post-Mubarak Egyptian society. Is this a root cause to what we are seeing in these political disputes?
As a matter of fact, we are in deep, really deep crisis. Neither the SCAF nor the Muslim brothers are truly democratic. They don't want a real democratic system. the SCAF wanted the SCAF wanted a candidate that nominated by itself, one of the military, to prolong, to continue to rule the country through one of them, a military man, and the Muslim Brothers want to reshape the whole society and the whole state according to their own ideology. And some of the elite in Egypt, by fear of the Muslim Brothers, they ally with the SCAF, and vice versa. And this is the real problem. We don't have truly liberal forces that have the real power to impose a transformation, a democratic transformation in Egypt. And this is the tragedy about what is going on in right now. The Egyptian people really want to establish a democratic system. This was the real objective of the revolution. But now we are witnessing an episode of a real fight between two undemocratic forces.
But if I could just at this stage, apologies for interrupting, but if I could just go to Hisham Kassem with this particular question. We hear that people are acting democratically, yet we have a parliament that was elected by some 50 million Egyptians. We have a president that was elected by just less than 50 million Egyptians. This is democracy, any outsider would argue. Yet we are hearing the argument here that the products of this democracy are acting undemocratically. There appears to be some confusion, it would seem.
No, we've shifted from an authoritarian country ruled by an authoritarian regime to a free country where elections are not rigged. But for Egypt to be called a democracy, we're talking about a 5 to 10 year process. By the time you rebuild the judiciary, media, and the legislative, this is going to be a long process, and a lot of it is 9 to 5 work, not revolutionary work or demonstrations. We need to build these institutions. And it's no surprise that there can be letdowns to people who've stood in queues in the millions to elect a government to end up with results like these. And like I say, this is going to take some time.
Well, Sameh Fawzy, what can be done? How can Egypt get out of yet another crisis that it appears to be facing? What must be done?
We have to differentiate between democratic procedures and democratic values. Yes, we have some sorts of democratic procedures happen during the election, but we don't have democratic values in terms of free competition, freedom of speech, good governance. We don't have democratic values in such way and in such weight in Egyptian society. My perception now, this is a time of crisis and we would like to get out of it. Number one, we should have a constitution first. Number two, we should have elections for both the parliament and the president, because after the parliament, after the new constitution coming out, we will see different power relations between the parliament and the president. And I think this is the time for Egyptian people who have experienced the 3 episodes of elections over the last year. This is the time to make their own choices, and then we can rely on the majority in the parliament in forming the new government, and then we will start some sort of stability.
Hassan Nafaa, if I can just hear from you very quickly, what do you see as a practical way to solve this crisis?
Look, it will go for some time. I fear the SCAF taking over. I have the impression that the Muslim Brothers now know very precisely that they cannot run the country alone. But if they are defeated right now and the SCAF is taking power again in full, the democracy will be in danger. I am confident that the Egyptian people will never have it changed, and they will never accept any authoritarian regime, and they will fight for democracy, but it will take some time. But I do believe that once we have a constitution and then there will be a parliamentary election, it will certainly produce another majority that will not be necessarily the majority of neither the Muslim Brothers and the Salafists.
Well, looking forward to then that new constitution, perhaps in 6 months' time, perhaps longer. But thanks to our guests, Hisham Kassem, Hassan Nafaa, and Sameh Fawzy. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. If you want to send us your feedback, please email your thoughts to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. I'm Mike Hanna. Goodbye for now.